This is Old Mountain Media.
Darkness covers the landscape like the coming of inevitable doom. Entangled trees dance with shadows, and the breeze carries a song of lost love on the air. Moss drips from branches, mushrooms blanket the ground. One might consider this place a safe haven from the hustle and bustle of the city life. One might.
My damn tooth! I gotta get me to a dentist, Wendell. Not today, Fred. Not God nor the devil will get me away from that gold waiting for us. You're right. Let's get to it. It's your truck anyway. I'm stuck with you. Let's get to the cabin for beans and hotcakes. Fred, you hear that? That whistle.
A haunting whistle sounded from one side of the canyon and was answered from the other side, almost like an echo, but different enough to prove separate origins. Then, a thumping sound, like a huge creature hitting its chest, a steady beat, a drumming akin to a ritual. The two men froze stiff. They had seen gigantic human-like footprints off and on around this area, but now they were sure of one thing. They were being followed, haunted by something that caused their very blood to run cold.
Pacific Northwest Sasquatch Shadows presents Something Cryptid. This Way Comes.
In the shadow of Mount St. Helens in Washington state, across the plains of Abraham and just outside the small town of Cougar, there lies a deep gorge known as Ape Canyon. There are various opinions and views as to why the canyon is called this. After all, North America is not home to a species of the ape variety. Or is it? The following story is based on multiple eyewitness accounts. Certain names have been changed as presented by Fred Beck, whose name has not. It's July 1924 in the Dark Divide, the 20,000 unexplored and unprotected acreage of forest between Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Adams in the Gifford-Pinchot Forest, where shadows cast wisps of unknown entities, and the visitor's mind will often play tricks on them. Fred Beck and his partner Wendell Smith had been scouting for mineral veins in the area around their claim, and over the past 6 years, their luck had been anything but good. But this time they knew they were on to something. That is, until they saw the shadow of a giant man peeking out from behind a tree. According to multiple accounts, a group of ape men attacked Fred and his mining partners, who were on an excursion to find new areas to mine for gold and attend to one of their claims, called the Vander White, 2 miles east of Mount St. Helens. The local native tribes in the area call this great mountain Lewitt, and to this day, they still do. What the mining party saw over the next period of 3 days is the stuff of nightmares. What they saw haunts even the toughest of wilderness explorers. This is the legend of Fred Beck. After a long and hot day of mining in the hard granite, Fred and his partners headed to their cabin. They were spent. It had been a day of disappointment, and the hunt for gold was not going as smoothly as the explorers had hoped. Wendell had been growing nervous after the thumping and whistling they had heard. It was unlike any whistling that he had ever witnessed. The sound had made a permanent scar in his mind. The group needed water, but there was no way he was going out there alone. So Fred joined him, and the two set out for a nearby creek bank to collect fresh water. That's when they saw something strange. Something unusual. Something that shouldn't be where it was.
Fred, what is that thing? Can you see it? Where? There, behind that tree. I can't see anything. Wait, what is that? Is that a man? It's looking at us. Quick, grab your gun.
Bark flew off the side of the pine tree with a shot.
That thing is at least 7 feet tall. What the hell is it?
The creature was tall, muscular, lean, and foreboding. Like something out of a nightmare. Like something straight from the depths of hell. Its silhouette was dark and seemed to absorb all the light around it. They could make out only 2 slits of light. Its eyes. It stared hard at the men, tilting its head slightly to the left, contemplating, thinking, plotting.
Oh my God, shoot it again! Shoot it again! I hit it! I hit it in the head! Well, let's go see what the hell that thing is.
They watched as the creature fell out of sight. They were sure it was dead, and wanted to see just what it was that had been threatening them from afar. They slowly and cautiously walked to the edge of the trees, but when they arrived at the spot where the creature had been standing, there was no sign of blood, hair, or even a scent on the air except for the usual dry pine needles in the afternoon sun. They peered into the distance, and 200 yards below, Fred saw the dark shadow of a beast glide across the landscape, like a tall man, as if it was floating with little effort to keep upright. But there it was, running.
How the hell did he get down there so quick? Beats me. Wait, look!
They looked down and saw large tracks, 14 to 15 inches long, that looked like a human's, with 5 toes jetting out from the front of the crevices left by the meat of the foot and the weight of the body. These were not the first tracks they had seen, and they had spent time investigating tracks like these in the past on former prospecting excursions. They noticed flattened grass and matted dirt around the back of the tree, as if the creature had been staring at them for an extended time, like a scout or a sentry preparing for battle. Fred and Wendell quickly made their way back to the cabin, told the rest of the party what they saw, and decided to head home as soon as they could. It might be a few days, but they were ready to get the hell out of there. They weren't about to go into the darkness with the creatures lurking about. After barricading the doors in preparation for the oncoming darkness of night, they lit the small cabin's wood stove and gathered around each other to discuss the journey home. There were no windows in the cabin, and their shadows danced on the walls as hallowed spirits that haunt children's dreams.
Hey, throw me them matches for my pipe. What I wouldn't give for some good old homemade tiger milk.
Tiger milk, a special liquor, would have calmed their nerves, but they knew they had to keep their wits about them.
Fred, what the hell was that thing? I have no idea, but it ain't natural. Let's just hope it's not off the track, coming after us. How are we gonna get home? Well, I reckon we'll hike out like normal. Keep those rifles loaded, and keep a sharp eye in them trees. They could come back, whatever they are. We gotta stop by the mine first and grab our gear.
Later that week, during the early evening hours, Fred's mining partner Sam set out to the local spring for water. It was hot and dry where they were working, and despite the lush greenery of the Cascade Mountains, the summer heat was bearing down on them like a hot poker on the back of their necks. Sam grabbed a large bucket, a 6-shooter revolver, and his clothes drenched with sweat. He approached the spring.
Hello? Who's there? Fred? Wendell?
A rustling sound came from nearby bushes.
Huh. Must be a deer. It may be one of those damn black bears that keeps harassing us. Get away!
Sam began to walk back to the mine, and the rustling seemed to follow him. Glancing over his right shoulder and then his left, he knew he was not alone. He was being stalked. He had seen elk, black bear, deer, marmots, mountain lion, and in his mind's eye, he pictured one of the large cats jumping out and tearing him apart, limb from limb. He'd heard stories about this in the past, and he thought his fate was coming quickly. He quickened his pace, trying not to think about what was following him. Panic set in, and his heart was racing. He couldn't catch his breath, and abruptly stopped to face his pursuer. He held his revolver out in front of him with his right hand, dropped a bucket of water on the ground, and stared into the long shadows of the darkening forest as the sun sank over the horizon in the west. Sweat was pouring down his face, and his gun hand was shaking almost out of control. He knew he needed to calm down and take an accurate shot. And then his stalker appeared. The great beast bolted out of the nearby bush and came running towards him like a steam train exiting a dark tunnel at full tilt. Was it a man? No. No man was that tall that Sam had ever seen. This was surely the devil itself, running straight at him. The creature's body was covered in black hair, muscles rippling on its chest where the hair was thinner. The face was not human, but then again, it was. It had an ancient look to it, like a being that had been around for thousands of years.
What in the hell is that thing?
Sam tried to raise his pistol and fire off a shot, but missed the creature. It kept running towards him with arms raised over its head and striking its chest repeatedly. It screamed, but not like the scream of a common beast of these woods. This was the scream of a person being murdered. Blood-curdling, hair-raising, demonic. The creature was nearly 15 feet from Sam when it suddenly stopped. Sam and the creature stood there, frozen to the spot, staring at each other. The creature huffed through its nostrils. Steam seemed to escape its nose and mouth. Long, sharp spears of teeth were protruding from blood-red gums behind thin lips that spread across its face. Its mouth was in the shape of an evil smirk, a look full of hatred and dominance. The cone-shaped head tilted to and fro, slowly, like it was possessed by something unworldly. It took one more step toward him, exhaled in a violent huff, and turned and ran into the dark shadows of the cedar and hemlock trees that were surrounding them. Sam couldn't move. He slowly lowered his gun and shook his head, convincing himself that he had just seen something from another dimension, something from hell.
A mountain devil. That surely was a mountain devil.
He ran back to the cave, shaking. His mining partners tried to steady his spirit, but he could not calm down. They helped him back to the cabin. The next day, Sam, Wendell, and Fred set out near the cabin at the edge of the canyon. As they made their way through the thick forests, another creature slowly approached them with raised arms. A stink filled the air, the combined scent of skunk and sick, and the pungent odor of blood. They could taste the putrid air on their tongues.
They're back! Load up and bring them down! Over there, by those two tall trees! I got him!
Sam fired his revolver, and Fred and Wendell let loose with their rifles, totaling 16 shots. Fred landed a shot with his rifle, and the creature toppled over the edge of the canyon. They heard it fall and hit the sides of the rock wall on its way down. There was no howling and screaming as before, just a silence that was deafening. Fred figured it was probably dead before it hit the base of the canyon.
Okay, what the hell are these things? I think it's some sort of man and creature combined.
Wendell was shaking where he stood, peering over the edge. The only way they could descend into the canyon was by rope, and they were not about to set out when more of those demons could be anywhere. They made their way back to the cabin as the sun settled behind the western hills and the shadow of Mount St. Helens cast her blanket of darkness over the dark divide. That evening, they made another meal of hotcakes and beans. Their meal was silent. No one spoke. Each of them played the scene in their minds repeatedly, and the food was barely touched. The surroundings were still. Not a sound except a gentle breeze could be heard outside the cabin walls. Occasionally, an owl spoke to the night, and a few frogs made their presence known. With every little sound from outside, they would jump. By all accounts, it was a peaceful quiet, but their nerves were frazzled. The haunting woods around them flooded their minds with visions of monsters and of demons reaching out to drag them to hell. They made their way to their bunks, when suddenly, Wendell yelled with sheer terror on the edge of his voice.
Help! It's here! Help me! Papa, I don't want to die!
A hard thud hit the door of the cabin. Some of the chinking had been knocked loose from between the logs and fell across Wendell's chest. He swung his Remington automatic about, this way and that, as if he were aiming at something on the other side of the cabin walls.
They're on the left. No, wait. No, now they're over on the right. They're behind us. I can hear them running. Oh my God, we're gonna die. Steady, boys, steady. We got enough ammunition to send them back to hell or wherever they came from. I want to go home. I want to go home. Calm down, Wendell. Quit your aching. We got them outnumbered. Look.
Sam was squinting through a hole in the cabin wall.
I see 3 of them. Just 3. 3 my foot. I can hear them all around us. They got us.
Something flew through the hole in the roof that served as a smokestack for their stove. A single rock. Then more began to fall in. The miners jumped out of their bunks. The number of rocks coming down on them grew, and a thunderous sound like giant balls of ice and hail hitting a tin roof deafened them. But it was not hail. It was rocks.
Where the hell is that coming from? What the hell is this? They're attacking us.
Wendell stood panicked while Fred grabbed his rifle, gripping it like one grips a life vest when trying to stay afloat at sea. The others grabbed their guns tighter and stared at the roof and walls around them. The pelting sound came from all sides. For over 3 hours, they were bombarded with rocks and stones, the ear-splitting sound overwhelming them. A combination of gunfire and pelting rocks throbbed in the miners' ears. Every few minutes, the gunfire would cease and the rocks would stop, and then start up again. It went on like this until 2 a.m., and then silence. A deafening silence. No owls, no frogs, no breeze. The miners sat petrified to their spots. Morning could not come fast enough. They finally moved about and nailed the doors shut.
Listen, when we stopped firing, they stopped throwing. Maybe they could tell we were only trying to defend ourselves, so save your bullets. They might start up again. What if they break in? Well, we'll use our guns and fight like hell. Oh my God, they're on the roof! They're on the roof!
The miners fired their guns upward, hoping to hit the creatures and knock them to the ground.
Pushing the door in. My God, they're everywhere. Unload on them. Unload!
The miners fired at the roof and at the door. Splinters of pine flew in every direction, blinding the men and hitting them in the face, drawing blood. Fred saw a long, hairy arm reach through a hole that had been made by the continuous gunfire. It was covered in black and brown hair, with lanky fingers like bony squid tentacles. The hand reached for an axe handle and started to pull it out of the hole. Fred quickly turned the head of the axe so it caught on a log, and then opened fire. But he missed it. He figured he sure as hellfire scared it enough, though, to send it running for the hills. Wendell, completely lost to panic, started to sing.
If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, and we'll all go home in the morning. If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, and we'll all go home in the morning. If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, and we'll all go home in the morning.
Fred sat with his rifle in his hand and slowly closed his eyes, waiting for the morning to come. Without any windows, they could just hear the steps circling in. The sun rose, and the calm of the mountain morning set in. Fred slowly opened the cabin door. He peeked his head out and saw another creature standing as tall as a statue, staring him down. Fred knew he hadn't been dreaming. He had hoped it was all just a nightmare, but this beast proved that he was not imagining things. He raised his gun, took a deep breath, fired 3 shots. And the creature toppled over the edge of the canyon, just as before. Fred stared at the place the beast had stood. His reality was changed forever. He knew in his heart that these creatures could never be caught, that they were from another place, another world, another dimension. The party quickly packed up and set out as fast as they could, deciding to leave behind about $200 worth of equipment. Upon their return to their hometown of Kelso, Washington, they told those who would listen about their account at their mining claim and the cabin, but many doubted them. Hunters, law enforcement officers, and a handful of newspaper reporters went to the same area to search for the creatures, and nothing was ever found, except a few footprints. But there were no signs of a wounded creature, no blood. No corpse of the beast they supposedly killed or hit. Surely these mountain devils had powers beyond human comprehension. What they did find? Rocks scattered about the canyon, as if the clouds had opened up with a downpour of granite and stone, like a plague from the Old Testament. Rumors surround Fred Beck's account of their time in what would later become known as Ape Canyon. A member of the Klallam tribe of Native Americans confirmed the existence of large creatures in that area, and to this day, hundreds of reports of sightings and footprints have been documented. Many Native American tribes do not speak of these creatures openly, either out of respect and reverence, or perhaps out of fear for disclosing secrets not to be shared. Regardless, the fact that Fred and his companions survived a week of the terrors of hell near Mount St. Helens leads us to wonder, were they telling the truth? Were they creating stories to gain attention? We will never know. But what we do know is this. Mystery surrounds the legend of Ape Canyon and the night where rocks rained down upon a group of miners who were trying to get rich off the land. Perhaps that is the real story here. Humans versus nature. There are some that may call this story a legend. There are some that may call it a farce, an account of trickery, a tall tale of lies and hyperbole. And there are some that have gone to the grave knowing the truth. What will you believe? What will you accept? Do you only believe that which you have seen, that which you have personally experienced? What would it take to convince you that you may not have all the answers, and you most likely never will? Can you accept that? I leave you with the words of Fred Beck, shortly written down before his death.
In the true sense of everything in the material world is a manifestation. Ever since the time the first essence of consciousness formed from the great void we cannot describe, different planes or dimensions of being were created or manifested. Occasionally, we of this dimension of space can be conscious of other beings of a different vibration and consciousness. These creatures are from a lower plane. When the condition and vibration is at a certain frequency, they can easily, for a time, appear in a very solid body. They are not animal spirits, but also lack the intelligence of a human consciousness. They are very close to our dimension, and yet are a part of one lower. Could they be the missing link man has been so long searching for? When this age or cycle of life that we are in moves on eventually to a higher cycle, and all life moves forward, these beings may stay and move up in consciousness in some other world in the far distant future. Perhaps the ape beings will toil the road of intelligence in that world which none of us can even imagine, and perhaps they too will lose nothing and gain nothing by their experience. I have encountered these beings on the slopes of Mount St. Helens. I have looked deep into myself to tell you of their nature. I have had both the earthly experience of encountering them by Ape Canyon and the spiritual experience of knowing and telling what they are. I have explored the distant future which brings to us with hope. I have told you my story, and it is true. Will their habitat change from selected mountains to nearer our populous cities? I think they will. They are just one little mystery from the ocean of mysteries.
Thank you for listening to this retelling of the 1924 events of Ape Canyon and the legend of Fred Beck. If you'd like to learn more, you can find the short book called I Fought the Ape Men of Mount St. Helens, a first-hand account by Fred Beck, with artwork by Everett Davenport. Fred did change the names in his original story to protect their identity, and the names have been changed in this retelling as well, aside from his own. Dialogue used in this short story is created from the events of 1924 as recalled by Fred Beck and his partners, and are not necessarily accurate, but are based on extensive research. The incredible introductory vocal music you heard at the beginning of this episode is performed by Monum, and composed by my great friend Michael McGlynn of Dublin, Ireland. Visit them on Facebook and Instagram at monum_men, and enjoy their videos on YouTube at anuna-monum. You can also learn more at www.anuna.ie. Check out Monum on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your music. You won't be sorry you did. Be sure to check out the episode notes for direct links. Something Cryptid This Way Comes is part of the Old Mountain Media family of podcasts and executive produced by me, Dr. Russ, of Pacific Northwest Sasquatch Shadows. Coming this fall of 2021, a new podcast with extended stories will make its debut, Legends and Tales of the Pacific Northwest. This storytelling format will reveal legends and tales of adventure and mystery, many of which are not commonly known. Keep a lookout for this upcoming podcast, and stay tuned for tales of invention, discovery, mayhem, and even a touch of murder. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed making it, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and a review, which will help these stories get out there. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and visit us on Instagram at PNW Sasquatch Shadows. Help spread the word and reach out and say hello. Just don't reach through my front door with lanky fingers and reach for an axe.
Something Cryptid This Way Comes is a production of Old Mountain Media. Visit us on Instagram at PNW Sasquatch Shadows and Facebook at Old Mountain Media.
Something cryptid this way comes.